first part of the afternoon is what institutional, organizational, and practical nuts and bolts need to exist for our congregation to grow and be ready to keep growing.
Ooh, that's great.
Well, this seems like a good time to say the counterintuitive thing that we were talking about at the table I was at lunch, which was that it seemed to the people who knew many of the congregation's stories that are represented today by the ministers that, that there were not lots of nuts and bolts in place for growth in a lot of the places we started. That most, if not all, of the growth stories that are represented here are also turnaround stories of congregations that were not in a good place when these ministries started. The question presumes that some stuff needs to be in there. And I think the question of what does it look like to be positioned for growth is really interestingly nuanced if in fact most of our congregations were in a negative place to start with.
When you're understaffed and don't have the means to, initially at least, hire the staff you need for growth, one of the things that you find is that lay people are doing a lot of the things that, in order to grow the congregation, are ultimately going to have to be transferred to paid staff who are more dependable and obviously are going to be present in a way that a lay person is not. And one of the things that I certainly discovered in Madison, and I think that many others did, is that we had any number of very strong lay people who had created these turfs and had a proprietary interest in continuing to be in charge of that particular turf. And oftentimes, being in charge also involved some self-delegated supervisory responsibility for staff, which of course, as you're growing and you're requiring more staff, creates all kinds of confusion around reporting relationships and boundary issues, and exacerbates the problem with church politics, creates tensions that other people in the congregation pick up on. That's not conducive to growth, and it creates all kinds of barriers to other people getting involved and feeling comfortable in that space.
A minister of administration, to have that be a sort of recognized ministry, I think would support growth in the denomination.
Can you say something about what makes that a ministry as opposed to a purely administrative role? That piece of it is unclear to me.
The way you structure the organization and the way you go about things, like the way meetings are run and the way staff interact, would all be founded in the spiritual life of the congregation.
Well, I essentially have an executive minister. And my associate minister, Thom, functions as an executive minister. And he supervises staff, and he triages pastoral care, and he runs the staff meetings. He oversees the financial life of the church. We have also a business administrator who does the bulk of that, but he is her supervisor, which frees me up to preach, to teach in the association, and to be a prophetic voice in the community. So if I had to supervise staff, I could not do those other important things that I'm going to do, and to write also.
Yeah.
I want what she has. You know, that I don't know how many times I've had conversations with people who said, the way that Marilyn and Thom have it set up is exactly the way. So.
Yeah. Well, we don't really train very many ministers to be associate ministers.
Right.
Is that as a career?
All. Well, that suggests to me another issue about infrastructure, which is whatever the role of staff ministers are, whatever the roles are in a church, we not only don't do much to prepare anybody specifically for a specialized role. There are places in our life together where we actively diss those roles, where we make them second-class citizens, where we don't allow that to be a fully honored specialty in ministry. And which means a lot of people who would be happy in those kinds of positions can't bring themselves to apply for one because they don't want to be a second-class citizen, and I can understand that perfectly. So I wish we would really concentrate on that, because our churches simply will not grow if you can only have one minister in a church, because you can only get so far that way. Or if the first 2 or 3 second ministers you have in the church are great conflicted relationships because nobody knows exactly how to do it and there aren't very good models around. So I wish we would really focus and concentrate on that. It's a wonderful way to learn and begin a ministry, and for some people it allows them to focus on their specific